Hello, and welcome to NCSL's webinar, Managing, Leading, and Growing in Uncertain Times. My name is Katie Ziegler. I'm with NCSL's Communication Division in our Denver office. Before we begin, I have just a few tips to share. We encourage participation during this program, and please feel free to type your questions or answer any questions that the presenter poses in the chat box, which is in the lower left hand of your screen. If you wish to try the chat now, I invite you to type your state in the box because we look forward to seeing where everyone is joining us from today. I think there's going to be a lot of people on this program today, and we're so happy you're here. I also want to draw your attention to the tabs above the main presentation area. One tab labeled Resources has a PDF of today's PowerPoint slides that you can download and save to refer to later. Another tab labeled Speaker has the bios of today's faculty. You can access these tabs anytime during the presentation. And it's great to see the states rolling in. Welcome to all of you. This program is being recorded and will be available on NCSL's website next week. It is now my pleasure to welcome Sabrina Llewellyn, the Deputy Director and Assistant Secretary of the Arkansas Senate. Sabrina has a long tenure of involvement and leadership with NCSL's professional staff associations and is currently a member of NCSL's Executive Committee. Thank you for joining us, Sabrina.
Good morning to some, good afternoon to others, to the legislative staff from across the country, and to everyone who has made time to join us for today's webinar. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. This is the last day and the last event of NCSL's Legislative Staff Week, a time designated each year to celebrate and elevate the contributions of staff. This organization has been a matchless cornerstone in my professional career, and I cannot thank them enough for all they have, are, and I have no doubt will continue to do to support legislators and staff. I wanted to let you know NCSL has collected examples of legislative staff's resilience, leadership, innovation, collaboration, and exceptional commitment during this critical time. You can find these examples on the website and via social media. If you have not already involved yourself with one of the professional staff associations, we encourage you to get involved. Okay. What a year this has been so far, and who would have thought we would be where we are right now? So much has impacted us individually and collectively in our personal lives and in our respective professional roles. This webinar is being offered to help you to reflect upon the leadership and management skills necessary to navigate the unprecedented crisis we find ourselves in. I am pleased to welcome Melissa Furman, a leadership coach and academic who specializes in career development, emotional intelligence, and management training. She founded Career Potential to help people and organizations succeed and is a faculty member at the James M. Hull College of Business at Augusta University in Georgia. Welcome, Melissa, and thank you for providing this training today.
Thank you, Sabrina, and welcome everybody who's joining us today. I'm excited to be here to talk to you about managing, leading, and growing during uncertain times. But to get started, let me tell you a little bit more about me. One, I went ahead and posted some photos of me so you have a sense of the face behind the voice that you'll be listening to. And I start all of my training and webinar sessions with telling the participants that I'm originally from New Jersey, although I currently live in Georgia. So I actually consider myself what I call, quote unquote, a Yankee Belle. They say you can take the girl out of Jersey, but you can never take the Jersey out of the girl. So it's still here. I also just wanted to bring to your attention a little bit about my background so you understand the context in which I'm sharing the content with you today. So my undergraduate degree is in psychology. My master's degree is in professional counseling, and my doctorate degree is in business. Now, I'm telling you this because you're going to see throughout the presentation today a little different flavor of the delivery of my content based on my background. So I am a licensed mental health professional. I'm also a crisis intervention counselor And my business training provides this unique blend of skills and knowledge where I can, number one, most importantly, understand people and human behavior, but I also understand the business side of things and the bottom line side of things. So that's just a little bit about me. I am an academic by training, so I have been working in higher education for a little over 20 years. But I do have my own consulting business where I work with organizations and helping them with organizational development type challenges. So let's go ahead and get started. So right now, using the chat function, can you share with us how are you feeling right now during these uncertain times? Go ahead and type it into the chat. How you're feeling right now during these uncertain times. I'll give you a few seconds to think about it. Yeah. The results, your responses are coming in. Absolutely anxious, frustrated, overwhelmed, unsettled, stressed. Yes, yes. Great. So I find when people ask this question, and please keep posting your responses. How are you doing? I'm fine. And then I'm terrible. And I start crying. Then I'm laughing. And then I'm screaming. And then I'm telling myself, just be grateful that I'm healthy. And then you know what? I'm just over it. Then I'm determined, terrified, anxious, but then I'm happy. And then I'm just plain exhausted. And that all happened in the same minute. I think we can all relate to that feeling right now. So then what I want you to do, follow-up exercise, is professionally now. So now we're shifting to your professional environment. In one or two words, how would you describe the state of your workplace right now? So kind of where are you at in your workplace right now? One or two words. How would you describe the state of your workplace using chat? Go ahead. I'll give you a few seconds. Well prepared. Awesome. In flux. In denial. Calm. Disorganized. Thriving. Functioning. Fearful. Yeah. Yes. Everybody just take a minute to look at the chat, because you'll see that everybody's workplace environments are different. But I think in most cases, we can all relate to this picture on our screen right now. I think this photo of the Jenga pieces does a good job describing many of these workplaces, because for some of you, you may still have some pieces standing. But for the most part, pieces have been pulled out for the most of us, and it's very chaotic. And you may even have spent some time in building up your pieces to build your tower again, only to experience in one day one piece be pulled out and the entire tower fall again. This corona pandemic is a crisis unlike any others in recent times. We all know that. And it has placed extraordinary demands on leaders and employees across the globe, including with you all as state legislators. I know individuals across the world are looking to their local, state, and federal leaders for a lot of things. They're looking for information, they're looking for assistance, and in many cases, they're just looking for comfort. And that's a lot. I mean, that's a lot for y'all. See, my Yankee bell. Did y'all hear it? Y'all? Yeah, in 2 seconds, you're going to hear some Yankee come out as well. So I'm hoping today, through this webinar, I can provide you some leadership, management, and self-care techniques to help you navigate these uncertain times. Although there may be some loose pieces and new pieces added over time, I want to provide you with tools to help you to continue to build your tower over and over again. So if you're ready to start learning these tools, I want you to go ahead and type yes in the chat. Good. Now, just so y'all know, I know there's over 300 people on this webinar, and I know the limitations of chat, but it's just a way for me to check the pulse, but it also provides an opportunity for you to share your thoughts. Remember, I'm a mental health counselor by training, and I promise you, even just typing a few words in that chat function could be very therapeutic for you. Okay, so here's what we're going to do today. There is a lot out on the web right now about what you should be doing and how we all should be reacting. And every time I open up my email or my LinkedIn, there's some new article popping up about what we should be doing. So what I'm going to do for you today is curate all of those different articles and things and all these pointers that we're receiving. And I'm curating them by using my training, my education, and my expertise to help you with those needs. So we're going to bunch this into 5 areas. We're going to talk about the top, not 5 areas. We're going to bunch it into 3 areas, but I'm going to give you 5 pointers for each area. Okay, I like the number 5. So we're going to look at the top 5 things you should be doing for leadership, management, and then for you and your self-care. Okay, so let's start with leadership first. Whether you're in a leadership position or not, you are still serving as a leader right now. Everybody needs to be a leader right now. Crisis research actually shows that when crisis occurs, organizational leaders should quickly create teams to help lead through the crisis. But what they tell those leaders is don't necessarily create those teams based by title or rank. Find people to lead those teams based by expertise, competencies, and demeanors. So I'm sure all of you right now have an area of competency or expertise that your organizational leaders may be looking to you saying, please lead us through this effort. So when I say own it, I think it's important that everybody just take a minute and own up and start thinking of themselves as a leader, regardless of your title or your role, because your organization needs your leadership right now. Second is flexibility, and I'm seeing a lot of articles out there about flexibility and agility, and that's always an important skill to have as a leader, but let me give you some insight. With flexibility, it's important right now that you're allowing space for variance, creativity, and agility. And there's 3 things that you need to be thinking about with flexibility. Number 1, everybody deserves the same degree of flexibility. Number 2, flexibility requires natural trust, not earned trust. And this is really hard for people right now. I'm hearing organizational leaders talk about who can do this and who can't do that. And there's different levels of flexibility based on who the individual is or the role that they're playing. And I'm saying we really need to dig deep and trust people. And now's not an opportunity. Now's not the time to say, I'm not going to naturally trust you. You have to earn my trust. We just need to go ahead and move forward and trust people. And the flexibility point of it is a 2-way street. Now, for some of you, flexibility may be really hard because you like structure. You like routine. You like plans. So this could be really, really hard for you right now. So you just need to dig deep and at least understand that flexibility is needed. You don't have to like it. You don't have to be comfortable with it, but you just need to understand it and embrace it right now as we go through these uncertain times. Okay? Number 3 is transparency. It is extremely important for leaders to be transparent right now and recognize the crisis. I've actually had some leaders recently, I've heard them say or send the message, quote unquote, business as usual. Well, it's not business as usual right now. And in regards to transparency, here are some pointers with transparency. You must be clear on what you know, what you don't know, and what you're doing to learn more. So again, being transparent on being clear on what you do know, what you don't know, and what you are doing to learn more. It's also important that you communicate early and often, and all of your messaging needs to be done with empathy, honesty, and transparency. Again, communicate early and often, and with empathy, honesty, and transparency. So I had some different leaders reach to me when the pandemic first really took off, and they said, what should I be doing? And I said, you need to be communicating with your people very, very quickly and as often as you can. And that was very insightful for some leaders, which kind of surprised me, but for some it just doesn't come natural. But hiding the bad news is the natural reflex of leaders, but thoughtful leaders need to recognize that speaking up early and truthfully is a vital strategy in a fast-moving crisis. And as we all know with this crisis, this is very fast-moving. Every day information is changing. So I tell leaders, take the reputational hit today for the reputational gains tomorrow. So I just want to make a quick comment too about optimism and what I refer to as bounded optimism. This is confidence combined with realism, because I am noticing some leaders are being overly optimistic and they're saying, we will get through this, which we will. But they're being very, very optimistic, and it is important to project confidence that the organization will find a way through this tough situation. But it's also important that you show that you recognize the uncertainty with the crisis and that you're collecting and gathering more information. Okay, which leads to my next point, is being informed. So how many of you feel like you can keep up with all of the information that's being presented right now? Go ahead and type yes or no in the chat. So how many of you feel like you can just keep up with all of the information that's being presented to us? Type yes or no. Yeah, nope, love that. Go ahead and type that in chat. Yeah, it's really hard. Yeah, I think this is what most people are struggling with right now, is just staying informed with what? Accurate information. So what I'm going to tell you as a leader, because remember, everybody on this webinar today, we're all leaders in our own way. So as a leader, you have to try to filter your way through the information and make informed, thoughtful decisions. Now, one of my areas of research is unconscious bias. And so I always tell people you have to be careful with the information that you gather and the decisions that you make, because many times in crisis, the first place people go is their gut or their intuition, right? And actually, research shows statistically, when making important quote-unquote business or strategic decisions, gut is only right 13% of the time. And when you're looking at making decisions during fast-moving crisis or uncertain times, that experience and intuition may not be applicable, because your gut and intuition are based on things that you've been exposed to over time, right? That just makes sense. You've been through this, you know what's best. Well, when you have a crisis like the pandemic that we're experiencing, this is new to a lot of us. So the experiences you've gained in the past may be helpful, but they may not be directly applicable. So here's what I recommend when you're informed, what you need to do with it. So number one, when you get the information, take a minute to pause and think about it and reflect on it. Don't be really quick to act. Okay, so first pause. Then assess. So you have all this information, let's assess it and let's try to look at it from different vantage points. Talk to some of your respected colleagues, get their opinions and their perspectives. Then anticipate the outcomes that could come out of the decisions. And then lastly, that's when you act on the information that you've gained. Right now, again, everything's moving so fast, we're just so quick to act, but I encourage you as leaders to just take a minute, pause, assess from different vantage points, anticipate, and act. And the last pointer that I highly recommend, and you're going to see this as a common theme throughout the webinar today, most importantly, it's important that you demonstrate empathy during uncertain times. Human needs are the first priority, and leaders must field the tough questions and challenges from an empathetic mindset or perspective. So I left that one at the end because that's the most important one. But I also want you to remember this. Keep in mind that people are not just working from home right now. They are at home during a crisis trying to work. I've had many clients and organizational leaders reach out to me to say, hey, can you tell me logistics or best practices for managing employees who are working from home, or can you do this webinar to teach my employees how to work from home? And I have to quickly stop them and say, we're not just talking about employees working from home, right? We have to remember that these employees are home managing a crisis while trying to work. And I think that's really important for people to remember. So using chat, how many of you are still working from home? Go ahead and put yes. If you're still working from home, no. If you're back in an office, your regular office. Yeah. Looks like many of you are still working from home. Yeah. Both? Okay, so some of you are going back and forth. Yeah, good. So transitioning into the management side of it, I'm telling people it's important that you manage in all directions. And they say, well, what do you mean by that? Well, you're not only going to be managing up right now, but I'm also telling people you need to be managing out. And naturally, you manage down as well. So right now, I'm telling employees and professionals, you have to help your managers manage you right now. And you also have to help manage your coworkers because everybody needs that assistance. But to be able to manage in all directions, we need to instill that trust again. And like I said earlier, trust needs to be natural and genuine, not earned. So I'm basically telling you it's probably not going to be productive to be a micromanager right now. Okay, so I want us to go ahead, speaking of micromanagers, to take a quick quiz. So if you have a piece of paper in front of you, I want you to keep track of your answers. But if you don't have a piece of paper, it's okay. You can keep track of your answers in your head. This is really a very easy quiz. Now, normally, I would tell you to be careful tracking your answers on paper if your supervisor or direct reports are sitting next to you. But hopefully, with social distancing, nobody is sitting next to anybody right now. I'm hoping. Okay, so go ahead and use your paper and let's go ahead and get started. So, for example, first question. The whole purpose of this quiz is to assess whether or not you or somebody you know is a micromanager. Okay, so this is the quiz. So do you constantly check on where workers are? Yes or no? Okay, so yes, you constantly check on where workers are, or no, you don't really care where the workers are. Do you ask to be copied on team emails? Yes or no? Are you reluctant to delegate? Yes or no? And I'm talking about anytime, because some people say, are you talking specifically right now or anytime? And I'm going to tell you both. So whether you do this during regular times or right now during uncertain times, yes or no? Do you break projects into small tasks that make employees feel like their contributions are insignificant? Yes or no? Do you check and double check on deadlines and ask for frequent updates, even about small tasks? Yes or no? Do you rarely ask for input from others? Yes or no? Or what I love is when people ask for input and then they don't do anything with your input. Do you apply the same level of intensity and scrutiny to every task, failing to prioritize? So what I mean by that is if you are a micromanager, everything's important. There's no priority. Everything's important. Or if you're a recipient of a micromanager, that manager, everything's important. Everything's priority number one. You're never fully satisfied with the work product. Never really satisfied with that final product. Yes or no? You take great pride in correcting or changing people's work. Yes or no? And are you subject to extreme mood swings? Yes or no? And now I know we went through these quickly for the sake of the webinar today, but you will have a recording and you also have the slides so you can look through them again if you want to take the quiz again. Because basically, if you answered yes to any of those questions, you may be a micromanager and not realize it, and or you may be the recipient of a micromanaging supervisor. Okay, so let's take a poll. Do you do any of the micromanaging behaviors just described? Even if you're not a manager, do you do any of the micromanaging behaviors just described, and be honest? And we're going to go ahead and activate the poll. Some of you are very honest in replying via your chat. I love it. I appreciate your transparency. Okay, so let's see. Roughly, all right, good. Responses are still coming in. It's looking like a little bit more than half of you are admitting that yes, you have some of those behaviors. 26%-ish are saying no. Roughly 13% are saying maybe. And I love the 8% who are saying it depends. I can justify the behavior. So I'm going to go ahead and send this so you can see the results. Okay? Remember, the first step to recovery is recognizing you have a problem. So that is a great start. And I'm very proud of all of you, this roughly 50%, who are saying, yes, I have micromanagement tendencies. Notice I'm not labeling you as a micromanager. You just have micromanagement tendencies. Okay? So let's move to the next poll. Have you ever worked for somebody who engaged in any of the micromanaging behaviors described? Again, there should be a poll on your screen for you to complete. Have you ever worked for somebody who engaged in any of the micromanaging behaviors described? Heck yeah. Oh, thank goodness, no. No comment. Which normally I get that a lot when you're sitting next to your supervisor or direct reports. Or, it depends. You're still justifying the micromanaging behavior. All right. Yeah, and some of you have good comments in the chat, so I just want to bring your attention to that. You're right. Sometimes you don't need to be copied on every email, but you like to be copied and you like to be kept informed and in the loop, and that's fair. That's fair. But let me go ahead and send the results to you. Okay? So now the reason why I did that poll and I focused on that specific topic is because a lot of times during uncertain times, people will gravitate towards their natural tendencies or gravitate towards micromanagement behaviors. Because you have to understand something. Micromanagement tendencies and micromanaging behavior is typically motivated by fear. Okay, now, I could give you an hour lecture about how fear drives those behaviors, but that's not the purpose of today's webinar. So just know that a lot of times those behaviors are coming out of feelings of fear. During times of crisis and uncertain times, fear is naturally going to be higher. So you may be experiencing some additional micromanagement tendencies from the people that you work with right now. But more importantly, it's important for you to take a step back and recognize, are you exhibiting stronger micromanagement tendencies right now? Because during uncertain times and crisis, there really is no room for micromanaging. It's only going to make the situation worse. So again, it goes back to that trust. It goes back to the empathy that you just need to do a check and potentially communicate or have some kind of a dialogue with the people you're working with or work for if you're experiencing a lot of those micromanagement tendencies. Okay, which leads me to number 3 under that management category, which is communication. We all know communication is important, period, but during a time of crisis, it's more important than ever. But it's super important that you are communicating often and with compassion. And some of my clients that I coach, compassion does not come natural to them. I have to coach them how to care and how to show people that they care. And so some specific things that you can do if you are in a management role, it's important that right now that you're scheduling regular communication with your teams and your colleagues. If in a face-to-face setting, if you had a weekly staff meeting, that's great. But in a remote environment during uncertain times, you may want to have daily meetings. But it's important to know that when you start those meetings, you should start them with touching base and inquiring about the welfare and well-being of everybody. Don't just start a meeting and jump into it and get into business. Just take a few minutes to check in with everybody. How's everybody feeling? How's everybody coping with homeschooling? How's everybody coping with their pets who suddenly realize that we're home all day? Just communicating with compassion and showing that compassion can go a really long way. Okay. With the communication and the compassion and the empathy, it's also important that you show your support for one another. Support each other while you're trying to homeschool children and answer emails. Support a colleague while he or she is experiencing loneliness or the inability to visit a loved one in a nursing home. You know, you get it. I don't need to go through all the scenarios, but right now supporting one another is super important because I want you to take a look at what's on your screen here. This was research that was done about what's the biggest struggle with working remotely. So clearly we all see unplugging after work. Okay, if this is something you're struggling with right now, go ahead and type yes. Just unplugging, like your days of home and work now are just fully blended and you just can't unplug. Like there's no cutoff end date or time. And you guys working in the industry that you guys work in, this is probably a common occurrence. Yeah, I assume so. But I would say even more so now. But unplugging after work, loneliness, collaborating. But also, if you look at the bottom of the screen, this survey was done in 2019. So this survey was done before the crisis that we're experiencing even hit. So take what you see on the screen right here and multiply it by 10. And this is what people are struggling with working from home. And show your support and support one another as your colleagues may be going through some of these things that they're dealing with working from home right now. Okay? And again, number 5, most important, I can't drive this point home enough, empathy is very, very important. So I conduct research on emotional intelligence and how it relates to leadership and organizational success. And in the last 10 years, we have found that empathy is the #1 predictor of success for leaders today in organizations. and it's been like I shouldn't say the last 10 years, it's probably like the last 7 years, that empathy is super important, but now during uncertain times, it's more important than ever. Okay? So why are people feeling so stressed right now? Okay, so using chat, why do you feel like people are feeling so stressed right now? Whether it's your colleagues or your constituents, go ahead and type that for me. And I'm going to give you a few seconds. Go ahead and type why people are feeling so stressed right now. Yeah, and if you're somebody who struggles with empathy, your colleagues right now are giving you a very long list. Again, sometimes people with low emotional intelligence have a hard time being empathetic and understanding social cues and being able to read other people's behavior. And so here, all of you are listing all of these reasons as to why people are feeling uncertain right now. Things like job security, uncertainty, childcare, healthcare concerns, at-risk parents, isolation. There's all these different reasons why people are feeling stressed right now. There's really no one answer because everybody may be feeling something differently. Okay, so when it comes to you and you growing through this crisis, because we all will grow through this. We will all learn something about ourselves or something about others through this experience. We will grow through this, and that's just not my bounded optimism. I promise you, we will grow through this. So what you need to do, first and foremost, is you need to take time to assess how you're feeling. That's why I started this workshop today asking you, how are you feeling right now? Because some of you may be going a million miles an hour, that you haven't even taken a moment to just take a step back to assess how are you feeling. So right now, mental health is very, very important, and 70% of Americans are saying that the outbreak is a source of stress in their lives. No duh, right? And people, I'm so envious of the people who are saying that through this pandemic they're going to learn a new language, or they're going to read a book a day, or they're going to do some amazing things during this time. And I'm looking at them going, oh my gosh, I wish I was them, because I don't know about you, but I feel like I'm working harder now than I was before the pandemic hit. And I don't know about you, but I'm exhausted. Like, I'm physically exhausted, I'm mentally exhausted, and I'm just exhausted. So a lot of people right now are feeling anxiety and depression, and they may not even realize it. So again, back to the empathy as a leader and a manager, recognize that people may not be in a comfortable place right now, and that may be impacting their productivity, their efficiency, and even their decision making. And so here are some of the signs that you can be on the lookout for, either within yourself or with your colleagues. So frequent physical complaints, like suddenly if all of your aches are coming out and everything hurts on you, or if you're easily irritated. And I'm not just talking about our spouses or our children being in close quarters, but like other things that just clearly very easily irritate you or make you angry. If you're feeling sad all the time, or you have this excessive worrying, snapping at a husband for no reason. But we're all in this together, right? Poor sleep patterns. I feel like I haven't had a good night's sleep in 2 months. Suicidal thoughts, that's a little more extreme, but recognize that people who do have mental health challenges, that may be where their mindset is right now. And increase in substance abuse, impulsivity, or reckless behavior. So these are just some of the signs that you may want to be clued into that people may be having a hard time right now, including you yourself. Okay? And once you first assess kind of where you're at, what I've been telling people and my clients that I've been doing counseling and coaching with is it's super important that you anchor yourself. Now, we're 7, 8 weeks into the crisis, depending what region of the country you're in. But hopefully you have figured this out by now. But if you haven't, here's your takeaway for the day. It's super important that you anchor yourself into some kind of routine. I know my first week home, I never changed out of my pajamas. It would be 6 p.m. and I'd be like, oh my gosh, I got to brush my teeth and take a shower. Well, if you can, go ahead and anchor yourself into a routine where you're getting up in the morning, you're showering, you're putting on clothes other than your pajamas. Maybe you go exercise and then you do emails and then you take a break and then you pet your dog or your cat and then you come back. Create some kind of a routine to your day to help you anchor yourself, because a lot of us in those first few weeks, we were just floating in a vacuum of space, right? But hopefully by now you have established your routine and you're good to go. But if you haven't, it's important that you do that. And it's also important that you get engaged. Now, this is both mentally and physically. Okay, so some people have been able to keep themselves engaged through work, clearly, but also puzzles. I mean, how many of you have made a bunch of puzzles by now? But puzzles, and I'm assuming the answer is yes, because I tried to order one on Amazon for my mom, and every puzzle is sold out. But puzzles, games, my in-laws are having a Monopoly tournament, and it's been ongoing. Reading, writing. You can engage physically by taking a walk or even just talking to your neighbor from across the street. So you're keeping your distance. Dancing, right? But if you find yourself binge watching TV shows on Netflix, make a little disclaimer, that maybe aren't documentaries, you may need to find other ways to engage yourself, right? It's okay to check out, binge watch for a little bit, but it's also important that you get up and you get engaged in other ways. I should ask that question on the chat. How many of you have been binge watching, and what do you recommend, right? We're not going to do that, though. Okay, number 4 is ask. This goes back to the assessment part of it. Instead of asking people, how are ya? Instead, ask, how are you feeling today? Right? Ask specific questions and check in with people so you can provide them the support. And for you, ask for help when you need it. Everybody needs something right now. Everybody does. Okay, some people need a hug. Some people need sugar. Some people need a glass of wine, right? Everybody needs something. So don't be afraid to ask what they need, but then also for you to ask for help when you need it. If you don't ask for help, you may become resentful, you may hold grudges, and you may find yourself being unkind and impatient with the people that you care about most. Okay? And the last one is to take care of yourself, physically and mentally. A lot of people are really starting to experience feelings of burnout as of now, and I'm just curious. Show me in chat how many of you are feeling burnout. And when I mean burnout, maybe burnout from the news, burnout from cooking every day, burnout from virtual meetings. Go ahead and, yeah. Yes, hallelujah, amen, right? Absolutely. Interestingly enough, before this pandemic started, I was actually exploring a new research stream of mine about burnout, specifically as it relates to Gen X, because a lot of my research is grounded in generational diversity. And then when this whole crisis happened, I was watching burnout happen faster, but I decided now's not a good time to continue my research on burnout. I'll wait until things settle a little bit. But yeah, a lot of people are experiencing that. So this is what I hope you can take away from today's webinar. These are just recommendations and strategies. And again, you have a copy of the slides. You have a recording of today's webinar, so you may need to go back and listen through it because I gave you a lot of information today. But I'm just hoping these recommendations and strategies can serve as a building block for you to help you to start building your tower again. Keep in mind, your tower may look like the image on your screen, right? Not the most stable. I mean, look at the bottom there. There's one block holding up that whole tower. But if you employ some of these recommendations and strategies, you're going to have the tools that you're going to need that for every time a block is pulled out and that tower falls, you have what it takes to build that tower and have that resiliency, okay? And so we're going to close. I know we have about a little over 10 minutes left, and we're going to field questions. But I have provided my contact information for you on the slide. You are welcome to reach out to me with questions or concerns. You can also visit my website and or connect with me on LinkedIn. With LinkedIn, I try my best to curate a lot of the articles that come out over the wire, and I'll post ones that I've read and I find to be credible. And so if you want to keep current on some credible resources, just go ahead and connect with me on LinkedIn, and you can follow some of the articles that I post.
Melissa, thanks so much. Katie, let's do some questions.
Sure. Thank you, Melissa, so much. I have a few that have come in already, and I do encourage the audience to please post anything in the chat box, and we'll get to as many as we can in the time we have left. I think, first of all, let's ask one that is related to what we were just speaking about. It's kind of a two-part question. How do we know when to reach out for help, and how do we know who to trust to ask for help?
Mm-hmm.
It's a big question.
I would tell you, if you, for a second, are thinking, how do I know if I need help? That's a signal that you probably need help. And there's no shame in that. That's important, too, to recognize. Everybody right now needs help in some way, shape, or form. And so if you're not sure if you need help, I'm going to tell you, you probably need help in some way. And so depending on what your needs are, you need to figure out, what do I need help with? Do I need help financially? Do I need help spiritually? Do I need help mentally? And if you do need help mentally, there's a lot of different resources that are available on the web. And I'm pretty sure, I'm trying to think, I will provide a resource that we can post. I'll work with the webinar facilitators, that it's a list of resources that you can pursue. And regarding who you can trust, that's kind of subjective to you, right? But I can tell you, through these different mental health resources and hotlines out there, you can trust them if it comes from a credible source, which I will provide you with that list. But if you're feeling like you're trying to assess whether or not you need help, you probably could benefit. And every single one of us on this webinar right now could benefit from some form of help, just because we've all gone through trauma. We've all been through this crisis together.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mean to cut you off, Melissa, but I can pose another one if you're ready. Okay, let's jump back a bit to management and micromanaging. And the scenario was sort of posed that what if a manager is exhibiting some of these micromanaging tendencies in response to employees who are fearful and uncertain and unmoored from working from home and maybe asking for more feedback. So how do you balance being responsive to your employees' needs and not fall into micromanagement? Does that make sense?
Well, I'm going to answer it one way, and if I don't answer the question, let me know, and I'll circle back. So this goes back to managing in all directions. So my first understanding was the question was, what if you're not getting enough management? Is that what you were asking?
I believe it was posed that if an employee is just feeling uncertain and feeling like they want more feedback because they're at home and things are different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you need to ask for it. And that's why I say you need to manage in all directions. You need to help your manager manage you. So if you need more feedback and you need more direction, you need to communicate that to your manager. Because remember, this is all new for all of us. And some managers may be like, oh my gosh, I don't want to be perceived as a micromanager, so I'm holding back. And what I tell people as managers is you're more of a coach than you are a manager. And you're not going to coach your quarterback the same way you're going to coach your offensive lineman. So your managers don't know what you need until you tell them. Like, they don't know that you're the quarterback. They don't know that you're the offensive lineman, and they don't know what you need. So it's important that you communicate to them that that's what you need. And together you find a dance that works for both of you so you both can be productive and get what you need.
Great, thank you. Another point that's come in from a couple of people, how, if you are naturally already a highly empathetic person, how do you not be overwhelmed with everything that is happening right now, and how do you not let everyone else's burdens affect you to bring you down? Or I also saw the phrase compassion fatigue. How can you manage that?
Yes. And that is a great question, because I'm actually one of those people. And right now it's a lot, right? Because you have a lot coming in and you're empathetic and you're putting yourself in everybody's shoes like, oh my gosh, that has to be so hard for them. What I recommend you do, potentially, if this works for you, is like journaling, whether it's handwritten or typed, because that way you can bring it in and then you can get it out. Like, you hear the people, you feel their needs, you write or you type about it, and you get it out. Because what happens is, if you're that overly empathetic person, you're just a sponge and you're soaking it all in. So use journaling as a way to wring out your sponge, for you to pop back, to soak in more, and then wring it out, and then soak in more. Because if you carry all of that with you, you will physically become sick. So chunk it. What I mean by chunk it, bring it in a little bit at a time, squeeze it out, chunk it, and squeeze it out. And if you're not a writing person or typing person, maybe you can even verbalize it. We talk a lot in counseling about verbal journaling, where you just record your thoughts and then you play them back and you listen to them. And in most cases, people are able to dump it and be done with it.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Another question that came in, back to kind of the management topic, both how, as an employee, what is a productive way to respond to a supervisor who is micromanaging? The mention of, that the tension is building and there's not any obvious outlet. And then a second part, which I think is related, is that, when a manager is not granting you flexibility and perhaps not having that trust that you spoke about at the beginning, how to respond.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so one, I would say assess your situation, and are you working for someone who's always a micromanager? And if you're working for someone who's always a micromanager, you have two choices. You can either cope or you can change, right? And what I mean by change is you go work for somebody else. And if you can't go work for somebody else, if that style doesn't work well with you and you can't go work for somebody else, you have to cope and put some coping mechanisms in place. But if you're working for somebody right now who prior to the crisis wasn't much of a micromanager, but all of a sudden is a massive micromanager, first thing I would tell you is be empathetic and understand that they are going through something that's resulting in them exhibiting that behavior. So it's not just about you, it's about them. Think about them and think about how hard it must be for them to be in this role, okay? Then two, you could either just tolerate it because you understand that this is kind of a unique situation and just let it roll off of you. But if it's wearing on you, I recommend that you have a conversation with them and try to peel back the onion, because remember what I told you, micromanagement typically comes out of a place of fear. So what are they fearful of? Are they fearful that someone's going to drop the ball? Are they fearful that something's not going to get done? Are they fearful that someone's going to get hurt? Are they fearful that this is going to hurt their reputation? Like, what is it that's driving their behavior? and then the two of you figure out what you can do to support that. Because you may find it's a very specific fear, and you may be spending all this effort channeling towards something that's totally not related to what the actual fear is. So you need to figure out what is that fear, where is it coming from, and channel your energy into working with your supervisor to help him or her overcome that. And just being sensitive to that right now. Now, let's just say a year or two from now, they're still in that place, and it goes back to you can cope or you can change. And so that would be my answer for that.
Thank you.
Did I answer both those questions?
I think that was really helpful, just in general, to remember your two pathways and think about which one you want to go down. There's some more great ones. I'm gonna go back. There was one about burnout. Is burnout just a matter of perspective? And if so, how do you address it? How do you work to change that perspective, or is there more to it?
Yeah, so burnout is 100% subjective to the person. Like, there's no one person who decides when somebody else is feeling burned out. It's you, and it's when you're feeling tired and exhausted and checked out and hopeless. So it is subjective to you, and what burns you out may be different than someone else, and someone may not understand why you're feeling burned out, but that's on them. If you're feeling burned out, that's what's important. And when you're feeling that way, you need to find what recharges your battery, figuratively. Like, does unplugging, literally unplugging and not being in front of the computer screen recharge your battery? Does going for a walk? Does playing with your dog? Me, I like to be around water. It's really weird. Thankfully, I live on the Savannah River, so I go and I just sit looking at the water, or I get in my kayak, and it's so weird. I just go sit in the middle of the river, and just being out there recharges me. So you need to figure out what can recharge you, number one, but then number two, what burned you out in the first place? Because if you don't figure out what burned you out in the first place and figure out how to prevent it, it's just going to be this ongoing cycle, which some people, that's okay, as long as they can continuously recharge every time they feel burned out. But if you can't continuously recharge, that burnout is just going to eat away at you, and physically you could start seeing some ailments from it.
Great, thank you. And this may lead into another question that came in about, asked, can you talk about the philosophy of Stoicism and how that might relate to this, and then also parasympathetic thought process, which those are terms that I am not super familiar with, but I'm sure you are. I'll leave you to
I am, and we could probably do an hour webinar on each one of those topics. So I don't know, I don't think I could do justice by answering either one of those questions with only a few minutes left.
Okay, that's great. Well, I would encourage that questioner to please get in touch with Melissa, or you can, any of you can always call us at NCSL, and we can put you in touch as well for with further questions. I think there's time for one more that I've seen come in. I think I've gotten to all of them, but what can you do when an employee begins to feel a lack of trust because a manager is checking up on them but won't address it with the manager? The manager feels like they're being supportive, not micromanaging. That sounds like it's a third party who's observing this dynamic. Any tips on how they can hopefully intervene?
Yeah, and I love these situations because I love working with people in those situations. So it's two-sided. Okay, number one, the short answer is it comes down to communication, right? Just like even in a marriage, like when you need to figure out each other's love languages or how they like to communicate or whatever, it's the same exact thing between a supervisor and an employee. And usually when I come into these situations, 99% of the time, both parties are not aware of how each other are feeling because they're seeing their situation through two different lenses. Everybody has their own lens. And so here you have the employee who's feeling like they're not trusted, and they're seeing things through that lens, but the supervisor may have no idea that the employee doesn't feel trusted. So number one, awareness is key, and if there's a way that you can have communication with one another, that's going to be helpful. But I understand some employees don't feel comfortable communicating that directly to their manager. And so what I tell those employees, again, peel back the onion, be empathetic, try to figure out why the supervisor may be behaving the way he or she is behaving. And what can you do? Because you have to remember, as individuals, we can't change other people's behavior. If you think you can do that, you're crazy. You can only change and control your behavior. So what can you do to help make a difference on the way that your supervisor is making you feel? So that's internal. What can you do? And then on the outside, what are some different things that you can do in working with the supervisor for him or her to feel like you're giving them what they need? So does that make sense? So internally, what can you do so you feel more trusted? Because it may even be just your perception. And really the supervisor's not doing anything, but there's something about the way the supervisor's treating you that's making you feel like you're not trusted. So what can you do internally? And then what can you do externally to figure out that supervisor and be able to give that supervisor what you want? Again, short answer to a long strategy, and we could do a whole webinar on that. But if you need more resources, just reach out to me and I can work through it with you. No problem.
Great. Great. Well, we are at our time, and so thank you so much, Melissa, and thank you so much, Sabrina, for joining us today. And I think this is exactly what a lot of us needed to hear at this point and where we are with our disrupted lives. And so just so appreciative of your information. And again, I encourage anyone on the line to come to NCSL to contact us if you have follow-up questions, and we'll connect you with Melissa. Certainly go to her directly with the contact info on the screen. So thank you to everyone. Thank you to all the legislative staff out there. Again, NCSL is so grateful for what you're doing in your public service. And I think we'll say goodbye.